Sega had one job in the early 90s, beat Nintendo. And to do that, they needed a mascot who had something Mario didn't: speed. Sonic the Hedgehog became that mascot, and for a few glorious years, the Genesis was the coolest console on the planet. But here's the thing about that era. Not every Sonic game was created equal. Some of them defined the console. Some of them were weird pinball experiments. And one of them required you to buy a completely separate add-on just to play it. So today, we're ranking every 16-bit Sonic game from the original to the experiments to the absolute peak of the entire franchise. And we're doing it the right way. S tier, A tier, B, C, D. You saw the thumbnail. You know what we're doing here. But this isn't just any list. My goal here is to objectively explain from a gameplay perspective why I ranked them as I have. And by the end of this video, you'll know exactly which games deserve a spot in your collection, and which ones you can safely leave in the attic. We're going to get into some of the specific details that you probably missed when you played these back in the day. So, let's boot up the console, blow on the cartridge for good luck, and get into it. We have to start with the original, 1991, Sonic the Hedgehog. If you were like me, seeing this game for the first time at a friend's house was a core memory. You saw that green hill zone, the bright blue sky, and that music, and it just felt like freedom. Now, when we rank this game today, where does it fall? I'm placing the original Sonic in the B tier. Let me explain. When you play it now, you notice it doesn't have the spin dash. That move didn't exist yet. You have to stop and roll into a ball manually, which slows down the momentum. Plus, the game has a few zones that are infamous for killing that speed. The pacing is weird. You go from the pure speed of Green Hill Zone to pumping the brakes in Marble Zone, so for me, that keeps it out of the top tier. Here's the thing that most modern players might miss about the water level though. The developers knew the water sections were slow and frustrating, but they designed them to make a specific kind of tension. They were testing if you could handle the platforming pressure in a slower environment. It was a design choice to prove that the game wasn't just about holding right to win. But the tricky part is, that choice makes it the hardest of the trilogy to go back to if you just want that pure speed fix. But you can't ignore its importance. The game didn't only sell the Genesis, it invented a new kind of momentum-based platforming. Without Sonic 1, we don't have any of the others. It's the foundation. Solid B tier, absolutely worth playing, but not the peak. So that's the origin story. Now, let's talk about the game that took that foundation and absolutely perfected the formula. We're moving on to the one that introduced a certain two-tailed fox. Alright, so after the first Sonic, Sega went back to the drawing board, and in 1992, they released Sonic the Hedgehog 2, and honestly, this is the game that most people picture when they think old-school Sonic. This is where we got the spin dash, which is a game changer. It's also where we met Tails. And the levels? Chemical Plant Zone is iconic for a reason. The music, the neon colors, the speed. It's burned into our brains. Now in the rankings, Sonic 2 is either number 1 or number 2 on almost every list. It usually fights for the top spot with our next entry. And for the sake of this ranking, I'm putting Sonic 2 in the A tier. Let me explain why, because I know some of you are already typing in the comments. Sonic 2 is arguably the most consistent game in the series. Its pacing is perfect. It builds up. Then, you have that insane final boss with the Death Egg. That's the payoff. The reason it's A tier and not S tier is simply because what came next took that formula and made it massive. Sonic 2 is a masterpiece, but the number 1 spot belongs to something even bigger. Which brings us to the undisputed king, the best Sonic game on the Genesis. I'm talking about the combination of Sonic 3 and Sonic & Knuckles using the lock-on technology. That's our S tier, the highest possible rank. If you had the lock-on cartridge as a kid, you knew you were holding on to something special. This wasn't merely a sequel, it was an event. This game is in the number 1 spot because of the sheer scale. We're talking about levels like Ice Cap Zone, Launch Base Zone, and the massive Sandopolis Zone. Here's what makes this different from Sonic 2. It's the narrative. There was an actual story here with cutscenes. It introduced Knuckles, and the gameplay? You had 3 characters with completely unique paths through the levels. Tails could fly. Knuckles could glide, and Sonic had the Insta-Shield. And if you got the Chaos Emeralds, you didn't just turn into Super Sonic, you got Hyper Sonic. It was the ultimate power fantasy. But here's the kicker. We need to talk about the standalone versions. If you had just Sonic 3 by itself, or just Sonic and Knuckles by itself, it didn't hit the same. The standalone Sonic 3 feels like half a game. It's massive and polished, but it ends on a cliffhanger. That version, I'm putting Sonic 3 on its own in the A tier. It's still excellent. Clearly a fantastic game, but it feels incomplete without the other half. And Sonic and Knuckles by itself? It's incredibly challenging, and the level design is impressive, but it feels like it's missing the opening act. That one is in B tier on its own. Still a very good game, but you can feel the absence of Sonic 3's beginning. There's a clear synergy between the two when played together, and when you combine them using the lock-on technology, you get the full masterpiece, unquestionably S tier. So that's the top of the mountain, the big three. But the Genesis had a weird life. After those classics, Sega started experimenting, and not all of those experiments were home runs. Let's look at the spin-offs. Before we get to the main spin-offs, we have to talk about the elephant in the room, or rather, the CD add-on sitting under the console. I'm talking about Sonic CD. Now, technically, this game wasn't on a Genesis cartridge. It required the Sega CD attachment, but if we're talking about the 16-bit era of Sonic, you can't ignore this game. It's widely considered the peak of the 16-bit design philosophy, even if the hardware to run it was a little extra. Here's where this gets interesting. If I were ranking this against the Genesis cartridges, where would it land? I'm placing Sonic CD in the A tier. For a lot of fans, it sits right up there with Sonic 2. It introduced Metal Sonic, Amy Rose, and that incredible time travel mechanic where you could go to the past and future in each level. And the music, the soundtrack is legendary. The animation quality was also unlike anything else at the time. But here's what most people don't realize about Sonic CD. The game was designed around exploration, not pure speed. To get the good ending, you had to find the hidden generators in the past in every level. That really meant slowing down, searching every corner, and learning the levels inside and out. It was the opposite of the hold right to win style of Sonic 2. So if you went into it expecting the same rush as Chemical Plant, you might have been confused. It's a masterpiece, no doubt, high A tier, but because it requires the Sega CD add-on and plays so differently, I usually place it just below the perfection of the combined Sonic 3 and Knuckles. It's not S tier on the Genesis list, but it's absolutely essential playing for anyone who wants to understand what the full scope of Sonic was like in the 90s. Now, with that out of the way, let's get back to the cartridge-based experiments. Now, after Sonic 3 and Knuckles, the 16-bit era started to get a little weird. We had Sonic Spinball in 1993. Now, this is a pinball platformer hybrid, and if you're like me, you had this game and you were probably super frustrated by it. I mean, the vibe is immaculate. The first level music is absolutely badass. The graphics are dark and industrial, but the game is brutally difficult. You're literally Sonic as the pinball. And if you don't hit the right bumpers to progress, you're stuck. It's more frustrating than it is fun, so I've got to put Sonic Spinball in the C tier. It usually sits in the lower half of the rankings because while it's unique, it lacks the speed we came for. Not terrible, but not something you revisit that often. And then we have Dr. Robotnik's Mean Bean Machine. Look, it's a fantastic puzzle game. The competitive nature of dropping beans on your opponent is great. But is it really a Sonic game? I don't know. It's a fun distraction, but it's not a platformer. This goes into the B tier as a puzzle game. And if you judge it on its own merits, it's actually pretty good. But if you came for a Sonic experience, you might be disappointed. And then we get to the bottom of the barrel. Sonic 3D Blast, 1996. Yeah, that isometric one. Look, the 3D in the title was ambitious. It was trying to compete with the new consoles coming out, but the controls are slippery. The camera angle makes it really hard to judge jumps, and instead of running fast, you're walking around collecting little birds called flickies. But here's the thing, the flickies are a problem, sure, but my biggest issue isn't just the flickies, it's how dreadfully long each level takes. The levels seem to drag on forever. It's slow, it's clunky. This is pure D-tier stuff. It's widely considered the weakest entry on the console. I mean, it's a fascinating failure because you can see what they were trying to do, but the execution just isn't there. It's the one game on this list that feels like a chore to play today. Bottom tier, no question. So, where does that leave us? Let's recap the full ranking so we can debate about it in the comments below. In the S tier, we have Sonic 3 and Sonic & Knuckles, the combined lock-on version only. In the A tier, Sonic CD, Sonic the Hedgehog 2, and Sonic the Hedgehog 3, the standalone. At the B tier is Sonic & Knuckles, the standalone, the original Sonic the Hedgehog, and Dr. Robotnik's Mean Bean Machine. And for the C tier, we have Sonic Spinball. And at the bottom of the D tier is Sonic 3D Blast. It's funny to think about, right? Going back to these games today, that fear we all have, that magic is gone. It just doesn't apply here. When you start playing Chemical Plant or Ice Cap, it all comes rushing back. The sound from the Genesis audio chip, the challenge of trying to get all the Chaos Emeralds, the feeling of beating that final boss. They were the peak of 16-bit game design, and that's the real reason we're still talking about them all these years later. But I want to know where you stand. Did you have the lock-on cartridges as a kid, or did you play Sonic 3D and Sonic & Knuckles separately? How about Sonic CD? Should it actually be in the S tier? Let me know in the comments below. I really do read them all. And if you enjoyed this video, be sure to hit that thumbs up for me and subscribe for a retro gaming break whenever you need it. Alright my friends, this is the Retro Gaming Boss signing out. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you on the next one.